I don't know. Just do all that shit. If you can figure it out, do it.
Yeah.
Good for you.
All right. Are we ready?
I love how many stories I hear of people doing crypto who don't know how to get it. Like, they know they have a ton of money somewhere, but they don't know how to, like, get it.
Access it.
That's really funny.
From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. We've obviously crushed this whole therapy podcast thing. So please go check out our new spin-off real estate podcast, available soon on all platforms. And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Yep. When you get really good at one thing, you start doing other things.
Or when you fail at one thing, you may as well fail at all of it.
Can't go lower.
If you want to hear three guys that don't know about real estate talk about real estate for half an hour,
Patreon.com/therapy.
now's a good time to join Patreon.
For as little as $1, you can be misinformed. Which you can already do by listening to this show generally. But yeah.
I hope that wasn't somebody's first Patreon episode.
Oh,
listen.
it is. Yeah. So, yeah.
So
Somebody's
listening to that for
somebody
the first
just
time.
joined in May, and they're like,
Is this really it?
So these
This
guys
is what
talk Las Vegas real estate nuance for an hour.
No. Not nuance.
No, there's no nuance. It's anecdotal.
Yeah. The nuance that we got into was less nuance than like a reporter on the TV gets into in a 20-second reporting bit.
I imagine
It was a bunch of farmers drinking coffee at the local co-op talking about real estate.
That's
pretty
right.
much what it was.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe we could aspire to
There
get
might
to that
not have
level.
been coffee.
Yeah,
Right.
The coffee's an improvement. I imagine how many people are experts in various disciplines and they hear us pontificate on it and just grind their teeth in hatred. Like, why are you even trying? You know nothing.
Yeah.
That's probably how it feels to be a therapist listening to us, too.
I think it's just on my mind because I talked to a realtor friend of ours last night, and we had a nice little conversation about some stuff that she's dealing with.
It's a top page news here, in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's a hot market. Hot.
So if you're new to Pod Therapy, welcome. But for our patrons, we do a whole extra, sometimes hour of the show before
Pre-show.
or after. So, and there's really no telling what topics we're going to be covering.
Yeah.
So,
I say half an hour of real estate. It was about half an hour of real estate, and the entire Patreon section was about 45 minutes.
Yeah. Checks out. Yeah, checks out. So yeah, if you ever want to come join us for pre-show stuff, you go down to patreon.com/therapy. You also get not just the extra, usually up to an hour of content, but you also get this part of the show released a day early. We release everything a day early for the patrons, and there's a great little page in there to discuss and comment, and it's a lot of fun. And also in May, we released a interview with artist Ryan Brunty. He is the artist and an entrepreneur responsible for a brand called Depressed Monsters, which his art is featured all over the Las Vegas Valley as street art, and he's invited to various fairs and things. He's a mental health influencer, and he got into his brand because of his own mental health experience.
So I was sitting at home the other day, actually just yesterday, sitting there watching some TV or whatever, and Laura comes downstairs and is like, why didn't you tell me you guys interviewed Ryan?
She knows Ryan.
Brunty?
Yeah,
and
she went to school with him too.
And I was like, who? It's like, Ryan.
My ex-boyfriend, Ryan.
Why didn't you tell me you interviewed him?
You guys broke up?
I was like, who interviewed him? What are you talking about?
You have no idea what goes on with Pod Therapy.
I was like, that's Jim's stuff. I have no idea.
I don't know what Jim does.
I find out when you find out. I don't know what's going on.
It was good. It was a fun interview.
Good.
I'm going to start just interviewing people and putting it up on your feed.
May as well. May as well.
Would be great.
Nick will have no clue. Just give him all the passwords. And
You
just see
won't
what
have a
happens.
clue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See when it shows
It's not
up.
like you check the feed.
New
No.
Patreon content.
Oh, yeah. No, we would not know about it at all.
But it's a really good one. Ryan is an artist and an entrepreneur, and he does really great stuff, and he does a lot of active stuff for mental health, and a huge supporter of it. So he was a great guy to have on there, and he talks shop with me, talks about his art, talks about his history and his experience. Every month at patreon.com/therapy, we release interviews. Next month, we've got a great interview coming up about opioid use disorder and some of the fundamentals of addiction therapy, talking to a student who wanted to learn more about that and was kind of interviewing me for a paper. paper, and I just recorded the whole thing and threw it up. So that'll be coming out. We also have special projects that we do, like going to the movies. We have our movie night with Nick and Jim. We release quarterly. The last one we watched, What About Bob, starring Richard Dreyfuss and Bill Murray. And you get to watch the movie along with us. You can put it on yourself and watch as we comment alongside it and summarize it at the end and do our yucks and have a good time. So lots of extra stuff that we throw up at Patreon, sometimes doing kind of deeper dives into random topics of mental health that interest us. But anyway, lots of fun stuff over there. And, you ever want to support it, you can come on down to patreon.com/therapy and get your feet wet.
And this month we are selling our Mental Health Matters t-shirts available at our store, PodTherapyBaitShop.com.
Yep.
Click on the banner up at the top. It'll take you to the t-shirt. All proceeds of that t-shirt for this month go to NAMI.
National Alliance on Mental Illness. So come check it out. Grab the shirt. All profits go into them. And support mental health, guys. This whole month, make sure that you're making noise about mental health, telling people about it, sharing this podcast, and inviting people to get honest about their truth and supporting them through it. So love having you along for the ride. And let's jump into some good questions here. So let's read our first letter here. It's about psych hospital trauma. Hi, longtime listener here, and I love your content. I recently listened to episode 162 about committing yourself to an inpatient care facility. You mentioned no downsides besides financial aspects. From personal experience of staying in numerous psychiatric facilities as a teenager, I'm still going through trauma therapy from those experiences and believe there to be many different downsides. So I guess my question is, what experience do you have with psychiatric inpatient facilities, and what level of experience do you have of seeing the environment of the patients? I understand from a therapist's point of view that getting to third base or near home of suicidality needs a higher level of care than just therapy sessions. But I have vivid memories of being forcibly held down at the age of 14, with 3 adults forcing medication down my throat against my will. I remember losing 2 meals in a row for not attending group activities because I felt uncomfortable with some of the male patients and their actions. I tried to report these types of situations after discharge, but to my understanding, they are very normal, legal, and common. I struggle in understanding how these environments can truly help heal someone who is already in a bad headspace. I would love to hear a professional's perspective on the environment of inpatient facilities and how they help. Anonymous.
Okay. Well, first off, I'm sorry you had those experiences.
Yeah.
Sure.
That sounds terrible. I guess a couple things. Number one, talking about withholding food. Withholding meals is not legal.
Yeah.
For behavior. Withholding any meal for any reason is not okay.
Yeah.
That's probably not what you're referring to as it being normal, legal, and common.
Is that federal or state?
That would be
would make that illegal.
It would.
Is that illegal everywhere? Is my question.
I
don't
would
even
think
you could
so.
do it in prison.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know exactly the law that would state that, but from a licensing perspective, that would not be okay.
Sure.
So it
I'm
couldn't
not
be a
getting into the
licensed
details
facility.
of it. Their human experience was, to their perception, it
was
appeared as
terrible.
if they didn't have them, as if they didn't get the meals.
Right.
Like in rehabs, we would have never withheld a meal.
And there
But,
didn't
like,
seem to be repercussions for the facility,
right,
based on those actions.
and also we don't know for sure what that really was. To the perspective of the teenager experiencing it, it looked like they were being withheld from meals and forced down. So anyway, just to clarify, because I don't know.
I mean,
and we don't want to say it. I want to just jump back. We don't want to say it like that. Like,
Yeah,
this was your experience.
yeah.
We're not saying
It didn't happen. We're saying no.
Yeah,
okay.
this is just your perspective. No,
Yeah.
that's what happened.
First reaction is, whoa, that would be bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing too, like, I can't speak to this from a psych hospital perspective. Obviously, I've been through a lot of tours of psych hospitals because
Tours?
Tours.
Yeah,
Tours.
I've gone on tours. Yeah.
Tours. And because we work closely with them, but I could see this exact same argument happening or discussion happening from the perspective of drug and alcohol treatment programs.
There's a program, yeah.
There are some that we know how to do it effectively with evidence-based best practices, and I know for a fact that there are some that are absolutely terrible.
Right.
So it becomes very difficult for us to make any kind of broad brush statement about treatment programs, which, yes, I think in our last episode, that episode you're referring to, we did talk about that in a pretty broad sense, in the sense of this is the typical experience of somebody going into a psych hospital. I don't think it should be ruled out as an option because obviously there are times when that is going to be necessary and it's going to be a positive experience. It could be what somebody needs. Are there bad psych hospitals? Absolutely. Just like there are bad drug and alcohol treatment programs.
Right.
But there are also really good ones. And it becomes very difficult to then state, well, the majority are this way or the majority are that way. There's always going to be bad ones. And the best thing that we can do as an industry is to work hard with licensing standards to make sure that those programs don't survive, that they get cut out, which actually is what I do for work now.
Right. Yeah, you're part of that improvement process.
Right.
Yeah, quality review.
And so it is something that kind of hits close to home for me because that is something that I'm very passionate about. I want everybody, all of the clients, to have really good experiences. And if I see a program that is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, I first try to offer help and assistance to bring their standards up to what is good clinical practice.
Right.
And if that doesn't happen, then
there's consequences.
We shut them down.
Yeah, there's real consequences for that. Yeah, so to the writer, a couple of observations here, friend. First, like Nick said, I am not happy that you went through that. I mean, it's terrible. And it sounds like you've had a pretty good, history with mental health care at every level. You mentioned you're doing trauma therapy right now, which I'm glad for. And I guess I don't want to excuse what's happened or minimize it. Not at all. It was bad. It was traumatic. It sounds like it was a bad program, a bad facility. And so, take what I'm about to say from that perspective, that I'm with you. I get that. And that is bad news bears. And I don't want that to happen to anybody. And also appreciate the context of our answer. In the question that we got back in 162, the question had to do with, like, if somebody is at a point where they're in danger, is there any downside to going into care? And at that point, we're going to say nope, because it's a question of harm reduction, right? It's a question of what's worse, death or a bad hospital experience. A bad hospital experience is better than dying, right? And so if somebody's going to inpatient psychiatric care, appreciate that generally when they qualify for that level of care, everything is bad. Daily living is traumatic. They might be having psychotic episodes. They may be doing a lot of self-harm. Drug and alcohol addiction can be that same thing. Rehabs are not always swell and fun. Going into a rehab could be a pretty negative experience sometimes and be a pretty unpleasant place filled with very unpleasant people. But compared to overdosing on a drug, it is preferable. Compared to the daily traumatic living of drug and alcohol abuse and active addiction, it is preferable. It is safer at the end of the day. And sometimes that's what psychiatric care is. At a psychiatric inpatient level, it can be unpleasant, but we have to compare it to the alternatives. So is it the Hilton? No. Is it a good experience? Not always. Is it preferable to death? Yes, it is. And so I guess I remember that I'm saying those comments after my first comments to you, though, right? Acknowledging that it was a bad experience. And I don't want that to be the case, and we want all care to get better. My personal experience, because you did ask a direct question, have you guys actually toured? Yes. I've taken lots of tours. Nick and I have different roles in the community. I'm just a therapist. But I serve, I've served as the president of NAMI at one point. I'm the president of the Nevada Counseling Association. I was on the governor's board. So in those capacities, I get invited to all the psych hospitals at some point to go on a facility tour, meet the staff, interview patients, get a feel for what's going on. Sometimes it's because they, want therapists like me to refer to them and to have a good feel for their facility and know what we're getting into. There are some programs I would not refer anybody to. There are absolutely hospitals that I would say, nope, I do not want anybody to go there. There was one hospital that literally got shut down in town, and it was like a main psych hospital, and it literally got shut down. They closed the place down and evacuated all the patients because the care was so bad, and it was discovered how bad it was. Nope, I'm not sending anybody there, and I'm not sitting here singing their praises, but there are other hospitals that exist and function well. I believe they have professionals, and I would send people there. And I've interviewed patients that have been there. I've had lots of patients who have had time in psych hospitals. Nick and I have absolutely run all sorts of programs where folks have gone there. I've had people come out and say that place saved my life. I've had people come out and say that sucked. I don't want to go back. And, it's going to be that spectrum. But I think they exist at that level of care because the alternative to them not existing is danger, socially and personally, for the patient.
It's always a constant battle, too, because it never really goes away. Like, there's never going to be a point in time where all treatment programs or all psych hospitals are operating on the up and up, and they're all doing great, and they're all ethical. There's always going to be somebody that opens up a program that they shouldn't be, that they're not qualified or capable of dealing with, or that they just don't have the resources to operate appropriately to match the needs of the community. Those are always going to be happening. Our best hope is to stay on top of it. With, like I said, with licensing regulations, with certification standards, so that if they're not meeting those standards, we can intervene and we can do something.
And Ryder, we need people like you. We need people like you. That's where organizations like NAMI are so important. NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, who we're sponsoring this whole month, is made up of people like you who have been through programs, and they are advocating for the patients. And they go. I told you, when I was the president of NAMI, I got invited to the hospitals and stuff because they wanted us, people who live with mental health stuff, to give them feedback as far as what our experiences are, what the experience of our family members was. And they want there to be, quality standards and feedback. So your voice is so important as a reforming tool for these institutions. And I'm sorry that you felt rejected. After discharge, you tried to give them feedback, and apparently they just dismissed you or somehow normalized your experience. That does not sound like a normal experience to me. And so, I just want to affirm you and say, I'm glad you're getting help. I'm also glad you're voicing your concerns. I'm glad you wrote in with this to give more perspective, because you're right, and we definitely want the listeners to be educated about that.
Neither of us have been patients in a psych hospital.
Very true. And your experience was bad.
Opinion.
And so we definitely hear you and want to validate that, and would encourage you also, though, to understand our mission on this show, though, is going to always be to encourage safety and help. We're always going to steer people toward helpers because we'd rather you be alive and get through that program and get to the next chapter than risk any other outcome, right? And so we're always going to steer you in that direction. The last thing that I would add on this, too, when it comes to medical experiences, I think we need to appreciate all hospitalization healthcare experiences are traumatic.
True, just by nature.
That is what you're doing. You are experiencing trauma. You are in health crisis, whether that's medical health or mental health. You are inherently incurring trauma and are being stabilized at a facility that is going to be intrusive on your body and your mind as part of their process. Now, again, I'm not validating these people. The people that worked with you sound like very unprofessional people, and I hope that they had consequences. Hospitals get shut down. Maybe yours was one of those. But I think it's also important that we recognize at that level, it is always traumatic. Healthcare is traumatic at the inpatient level, almost no matter what. That's an important piece too. But please, friend, don't let your feedback stop just with this letter. Please look into NAMI. You need to be a voice. You need to advocate for other people that might be going through this, for teenagers that might be going through this. And you do that by joining NAMI. I think that that's a great place for you to go and get facilitated, and that way you can, be a voice and an advocate. So we need voices like yours. That's how the industry changes. We need people to not just end the stigma about dealing with mental health, but they need to be so open and ready to talk about this that they can also reform the practitioners so that we all grow together. So this kind of a letter is absolutely necessary, and I'm glad you wrote in.
Is NAMI the best place to go to ask people to look into things like this?
NAMI is a great place to start a conversation, yes, because NAMI can advocate for the patients. NAMI doesn't have power. They're just a volunteer group.
So
it's a great place
if I
to
come
get
out
support.
of a facility like that and I feel like there were some practices happening there that shouldn't be happening there, what's something that I should do?
Contact your state's organization. So every state has a department that oversees.
Usually it's called the hospital department.
Right. Yeah. Or human services. If there's a Department of Human Services,
Health
you can
and Human
contact them,
Services.
something like that.
Great.
They can then direct you where you need to go. There's also going to be accreditation.
CMS. Yeah, CMS and
CMS.
JCO are the big ones.
Yeah.
So CMS is the certification for Medicaid, and every hospital must be CMS certified. The hospital in Vegas that got shut down by CMS.
Right.
So CMS is usually God of any hospital, and they're very interested in patient surveys. So is JCO. But Nick's right. The very first step is usually to contact Health and Human Services in your state and tell them you'd like to file a complaint.
Yep.
And they have an absolute process for that. It's a great question, Jacob, because people need to know that there's consequences for this. Healthcare matters. It is a service, and you are, a customer and a patient, and you deserve to have good quality stuff. Mm-hmm. And there should be accountability. And we scrutinize each other. Like Nick was sharing it as part of his answer. His job is literally to hold colleagues accountable and to improve the system. So, yep, there are watchdogs out there. You just got to know how to get in touch with them.
Right. I feel like I'd be really good at that job. I feel like through the last couple of years of doing this podcast, I've gotten really good at judging psychologists.
Yeah. I could see you just walking in with your theme music blaring.
Yeah. Lights, pyro.
Yeah, oh yeah. Got to make an entrance. That way they're like, shit.
I could use an intern.
There you go. You could send Jacob in.
Yeah.
What's that pay, like $250,000 a year?
Yeah. It's somewhere
around that. Yeah. Round up.
Give or take.
Give or take. Maybe
you can
a
be
little
like,
bit more
give or take roughly $250,000.
Like Key and Peele that did the thing, where
the
Obama's
angry interpreter.
Yeah. He could be my angry interpreter.
There's no consequences. Jacob can say whatever he wants.
Yeah.
That'll also make them want to deal with you. Like, send in Jacob first with the pyros and the sunglasses and just not caring.
Are you suggesting good psychologists, bad psychologists?
Yes.
It's like an episode of Bar Rescue.
Yeah.
It's like Rehab Rescue.
That's right. Yeah, just send him in first, and they're like, God, we can't work with that guy. And then Nick comes in all Iowa nice, and he's like, guys, I don't want to have to send Jacob back here. I think
he wants to come back here.
He wants to come back. He's on the phone right now. I told him to hold on. Let me talk to you first.
He's in the car.
He's in the car. That's right. No. It's cool. Like, what do you need us to do? I need to see these policies and procedures be redrafted.
Yep.
Anyway, Ryder, congratulations on getting healthy. Glad that you're supporting our show. Thank you for being a mental health advocate. And, again, expand your advocacy. This letter is a step in that direction. Do more. We need voices like yours to make everything better. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are discussing how to deal with an addiction to pornography. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, Kayla Lansbury, Crazy Manana Scoop, and Malaya. Would you like to sponsor a show? Become a therapy producer at patreon.com/therapy. All right, our trivia theme this week in honor of our therapy producers is social psychology.
Yeah!
Which best describes the audience inhibition effect? When there are others present, people will inhibit from helping others because they assume someone else will intervene. B, people are inhibited from helping others in fear that the other bystanders will evaluate them negatively if the situation is not an actual emergency. C, people are inhibited from helping others for fear of drawing unwanted attention to themselves. Or D, people are inhibited from helping others because some people just want to watch the world burn. If you would like to join the therapy producers to make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up.
Oh my gosh. That man is choking. No. Watch him. Let it happen. My God, we have to save him. No, he knows what he did.
Hold on. I'm going to set him on fire.
Why are you kicking him in the chest?
He knows what he did.
He knows what he did. Get his wallet. Sir, I'm just looking for your ID and this credit card.
I think it's my turn to go first, isn't it?
Okay, go for it.
All right, what do you think? What's it called? The audience effect?
Audience inhibition effect.
All right. So why are they inhibited from action?
All right, give me a quick breakdown of the four options again.
First one, people don't help because they assume someone else will help.
Okay.
The second one, people don't help because there's a fear of negatively being judged by others if it turns out it's not an actual emergency. C, people are inhibited from helping because of fear of drawing unwanted attention onto themselves. Or D, people want to watch the world burn.
Man, D sounds good.
I'm down to 2.
Okay. All right.
Jim, where are you at?
I'm down to 1.
You're down to 1.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, so you know it.
I know it.
Okay.
Yeah, this one's
I
the
think
layup.
you think you know it.
Oh, I think I know everything. That we've covered this. That is the pretentious thing people do not like about me. Yeah. And how often I'm wrong. It's not that I'm wrong, it's that I'm confidently wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Ooh. Oh, he's going to write his answer down. All right.
I've written down my answer.
Okay.
Jim, go ahead.
It's A. The audience inhibition effect happens because people all assume somebody else will do it. And so this is why in CPR training now, the best practice is to train each person to point at another person and ask them by name, if you know it, to go get help. So if you're going to start administering CPR, you turn and you say, Bob, call 911. And the reason you do that is because you can't just expect somebody else to do it because everybody's expecting somebody else to do it. That's why you have to tell somebody to do it. That's what that study resulted in.
Sounds pretty confident.
He wrote down A, Woo, which leaves me unable to win.
You're still behind.
Damn it.
I was between A and B.
Okay.
And B, because I've heard the A thing before. I've heard that one before. That everybody thinks that somebody else will just help.
Right.
I've never heard the B theory that you don't want to be critically evaluated.
What if it goes wrong? I shouldn't have gotten involved.
And I don't hate that one.
I know.
Are you guys ready for the twist?
Go ahead.
It's
what?
B.
What?
It is B.
All right.
The audience inhibition effect is that people are inhibited from helping others for fear that other bystanders will evaluate them negatively if the situation is not an actual emergency.
The not actual emergency, that's the part that really made me want to go after B.
Oh, wow. So it's not A.
It's not A.
Wow.
A is a thing. That's a real thing.
Did you throw A in there to get me?
Yes.
Was this bait? Damn it! I always get the bait. God damn you. You baited me again.
Yeah.
Shit. B's a thing?
Yeah.
People don't help people because they're scared that people
I
will
didn't think for a moment that B wasn't a thing.
Wow.
I thought that maybe that wasn't what this study went after.
D's a thing. D's absolutely a thing.
D is a thing
Sometimes
from Batman.
I'm sitting there eating popcorn. I just want to see if this dude makes it. That's it. I don't care what happens. Are you going to call for help? Nah. Let's let nature take its course. Let's see what happens. All right. Good trivia. Good
All
trivia.
right.
Dealing with porn
Jacob's
addiction.
still ahead.
Yeah, I know. God, I can't get ahead of this dude. He's got me by
Maintaining his
one.
lead.
He is. He's always one car length ahead of me. There's nothing I can do about
PhD
it.
on the line.
Oh, I got to get through this month. I hope I can come back in round 2 on this one. Hello, I am a 23-year-old married man from Malaysia living in Singapore. I wouldn't say that this, in particular, is an addiction as I am still well functioning as an adult without this problem affecting my ability to be a productive member of society. I have no problems with work, social life, or relationships.
I have a follow-up question to that part of this email.
Okay.
As soon as you're done reading this email.
Okay.
Copy. However, I find myself watching things I am not supposed to, even though I keep telling myself that I want to stop. The societal and religious taboo over this topic of pornography keeps me feeling conflicted, as I truly believe that I should not indulge in it, but I still go back to it when I have a private opportunity. My wife has no idea about this, and to be honest, part of the reason why I got married so early was because I had hoped that it would help me stop this behavior. I've tried being aware of these opportunities when they come and occupying that time with something else, but I fail to keep that up, as for me, what I aim for is to completely stop, and I was hoping for some advice on what steps I can take at this stage to stop it from getting out of hand. Love the show. Super insightful and digestible content for the general audience. I hope you guys get bigger and bigger so that everyone gets a chance to learn. Please feel free to edit this message as you see fit. We didn't. With regards, Anonymous. Oh, okay. Actually, he has a pen name. Mike Oxmall. Mike Oxmall. And he says, P.S. Not my real name. Plagiarized from Hobbs and Shaw. There you go.
Cool.
Never saw it.
Yeah.
Did you?
It's one of the Fast and Furious ones.
I knew that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Probably why I didn't watch it. I
Alright.
watched Fast and Furious 1, and then by the second one, I was like,
Ducked. Yeah. I think I popped into Tokyo Drift on a flight, but that's it. Yeah, so I have no idea.
Which apparently has nothing to do with the rest of the movies.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's not canon. No, it has nothing to do with any of those characters.
I didn't know there
Actually, I
was
think Paul Walker's in it.
canon.
Yeah.
I think some of the characters are in it, but I think that the Fast and Furious fan base just kind of ignores Tokyo Drift.
Drift's the one that doesn't have Vin Diesel. After that, everything is Vin Diesel. He is crucial.
And The
Paul
Rock.
Walker. Oh, The Rock shows up eventually.
Yeah, he
he's
gets
not
in
in
there,
the
right?
first ones. Yeah, he's a bad guy. And then, of course, everybody always gets recruited. So every single player in the show, I think, was an opponent of Vin Diesel. And then at some point at the end, Vin Diesel and that guy like have a big, huge, manly handshake. And they're like, I respect you now that we fought. And then they just join the crew.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you were like an FBI. Or like, now you just hang out with these carjack guys. And,
I don't
All
like
right.
you, but God damn it, do I respect you.
Ron Burgundy. All right, so
my question from the email for you guys is, can you define addiction for me?
right, yeah, I think I can tell that the writer is responding like to something we've talked about before, which is
like the fact
what is
that
an
it's
addiction.
not negatively affecting your life outside of this, cool.
Yeah.
But that doesn't seem like that would necessarily mean that it is not an addiction.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the writer's saying, listen, I have a tendency to use pornography. Mm-hmm. I have all these religious objections to it. I don't feel good about it. It's been a part of my life for a long time.
Great.
And I kind of hear the author in the first sentence just kind of like saying, listen, guys, I'm not sure if a word addiction applies to this. Because, look, it's not causing me problems at work and all these other things. So I think they're just saying, like, hey, in case that word is too big, here's my real question. Yeah. But, I mean, for the record, Nick, I mean, defining addiction.
So this is where it gets really confusing because when we talk about addiction, there's no technical, like DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for addiction.
Sure,
what we have is we've got use disorders, right? So there's like gambling disorder, there's substance use disorder, but there's nothing that's actually addiction. Addiction is more kind of colloquial, common speak. But there's...
Because like I could be... Correct me if I'm wrong. I could have a gambling addiction.
Right.
And just because it doesn't negatively impact the rest of my life. Like I might gamble $500,000 a year.
Right.
But if I make $10 million a year...
Yeah.
Then that might not really negatively impact my life. That doesn't mean that it's not an addiction necessarily. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So essentially, like if we were talking substances or gambling, I guess we'll stick with that example. We wouldn't diagnose you with a gambling addiction. It would be a gambling disorder.
Okay.
Essentially. But if we're talking specifically about addiction, I always like the 4 C's.
Yeah, that's what I use.
Of addiction.
Yeah.
It's kind of the best way to really explain it, which is like,
the fourth one, we can't say it without getting the explicit tag.
Yeah. Fourth one is a British swear word.
Yeah. Australians love the fourth one.
Yeah. So the first one having to do with compulsive behavior around whatever the substance is.
Okay.
So whether it's a substance or looking at porn or something like that.
Compulsively.
It's the compulsive need
Autopilot.
to have it.
Yeah.
Right. The second C would be cravings. So experiencing intense cravings when you don't have it.
Physical or emotional. Yeah.
And then the third would be continued use despite consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So there's it's negatively affecting your life somehow, but yet you continue to do it.
Right.
And then the fourth would be loss of control.
Yeah.
So you can no longer control how much you're doing this behavior.
You've tried to cut back and you failed.
Okay. Yep, failed attempts to quit, stuff like that.
Yep. So, yeah, I think that where the writer's saying, listen, I have this pattern of behavior around pornography. I'm not sure if it's addiction, and I'm glad we're talking about what addiction is, and so sure, there's some of these C's, you seem to do it compulsively. You seem to have a craving attached to it. You're telling us, hey, listen, I haven't had a lot of negative consequences about this. I have tried to quit. I have not been successful. Okay. It's something you would like to change, period. At the end of the day, we don't need to label it addiction or not addiction. You're writing in and saying, guys, I watch too much porn. I really don't feel comfortable with it. I wish I would stop. Advice.
And this is the really difficult piece to looking at this is to separating, because he even says the societal and religious taboo over it.
Right.
Separating that from what we would call addiction.
Sure.
Because there are a lot of folks that the famous research that we've heard is, the 2 states that have the most pornography use.
Yeah.
Are reported problems with pornography.
Yeah.
Utah and Mississippi. Right. The 2 that are most commonly considered
associated with religion.
Right.
Yeah.
So is it that it's really a problem, or is it that it's a problem because society is saying it's a problem?
These people consider it a problem.
Right. So to some degree, it doesn't matter either way. If a problem's a problem.
That's how
however
I argue
you define it.
Yeah.
Right. But there is also the other end of that too that I want to make clear though is that doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with you. Right. If you're a human being, you have sexual desires. Pornography is kind of created to fulfill those desires. So the fact that you are attracted to this doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with you.
Right.
Now, you may feel like something is wrong with you because you have these other beliefs, whether it's society or religion, that tell you you shouldn't be feeling this or you shouldn't be doing this behavior, yet you're doing it. That's causing a problem.
Yeah. Right.
So separating the religious and spiritual aspect from the addiction aspect, it's possible it could be one, could be the other, could be both.
Yeah.
Either way, I think what we ultimately have to look at it is it causing problems in your life? And if so, what attempts have you made to correct or fix this, and have they been successful?
And I think we should say, too, I think we're all assuming that this is kind of legal pornography.
Yeah.
This is not children. This is not forced actions. This isn't anything like that. We're in the realm of like this pornography company made a pornography movie or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm glad Nick brings up. So, Mike, there is this big, huge fight inside of psychology right now between one group, which is ASECT, primarily as the flagship of that, and the other group, pretty much the APA. And so the debate is when it comes to compulsive sexual behaviors like porn or sex addiction, things like that, how much of this is real, like we'd call it a compulsive behavior that this person deserves to get help from because they don't like that they do this and we should want to help that? Or is it, well, it isn't that the sexual behavior is wrong, it's that you have a religious view or a societal pressure on you. That's the problem, and we got to remove that. And so one argument from ASECT says, guys, we're pathologizing sex stuff, and that's not good. We shouldn't make people feel sad or scared about sex stuff. We need to rescue that, and what the real enemy here is religion and society. The other argument says, no, sex stuff can, like all appetites and all other human behaviors, get to a place where it is pathological. Eating is healthy. You can overeat, and it becomes harmful to you now. And it's possible that you could do that with sex. So, yeah, we debate about this all the time. My view is I believe the patient. And so if the patient comes to me and says, I'm doing this, I would like to stop doing this. I need help with this. I'm really interested in exploring a lot of the undergirdings of this. I do want to know about your religion. I do want to know about where the pressure comes from. I do want to navigate some of that with you. And you're asking me to help you. And so, I would like you to get results, and those results be helpful to you.
I agree with that as long as we're also addressing the shame component.
Yeah, of course.
That's
what we do with
always...
addiction, too. If somebody's like, I'm such a bad person for drinking, we'll be like, okay, let's unpack that, right? Where are you getting that? It's a disease. Let's start with that. So anyway, we've done a lot of hullabaloo here about the complexities of addiction itself and pornography.
Well, real quick before we go on from that, I think one thing that we can kind of obviously he's in Malaysia, right? Or he's from Malaysia, living in Singapore. Yeah. So there definitely is some societal religious issues going on there, but I think there's also more than that because there's a couple things in here that the writer is talking about that indicate this is a more serious problem than just it doesn't go with my religion or it's in conflict with my religion or with my society. The fact that he's tried to quit has been unsuccessful.
Right.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
I got married in an attempt
to curb my sexual appetites. Yeah.
Those two things right there tell me, even if we throw out the religious societal issues, we're still dealing with a potential problem here.
Right. Yeah. So a couple of pieces from that angle. So again, for anybody out there who listens to this who's like, man, I really do not like anybody talking about curbing sexual appetites. It just feels like you're stifling. It's not okay. Okay, friends, thank you. I appreciate the feedback. At the end of the day, somebody wrote in with a question. I'm going to give them resources. So if somebody said, please help me stop gambling, I'm going to help them with that. So that's where I'm going to aim my advice. So if
someone says it's a problem for them, then it's a problem.
At the end of the day, I believe in humans being able to speak for themselves, and that's it. If they say, please stop me from eating M&Ms, I don't want to lecture them about how M&Ms are great. I'm going to say, that's fine. Let's stop eating M&Ms. So a couple of things, resources.
You should stop eating M&Ms.
You should definitely stop eating M&Ms. Yeah. Unless M&M sponsors the show, in which case, get your mental health M&Ms. That's what the M stands for. Okay, couple of resources. Out of the Shadows by Patrick Carnes, I think is a really good one. That book, I think, was a seminal work at one point in history that started talking about the clinically driven ways to treat compulsive sexuality and specifically pornographic addictions and things like that. So that one's a really good text, I think, to start with. He has an entire body of work that he's considered, one of the leading experts when it comes to compulsive sexual disorders. His works are all of my go-to materials. Now, you live in another country, but there are also support groups. Sex Addicts Anonymous Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. These are both organizations that you can look into. I'm sure you can attend online meetings. They have also very supportive texts for people that, are experiencing this sense of like loss of control in their sexuality, where the sexuality governs them rather than them governing the sexuality. They feel their lives are becoming unmanageable. So those are just, a quick little recap of some resources that you can find on these particular things. And of course, Mike, as we usually do, I'm going to encourage therapy. You seem to be navigating some really complex inner desires, right? You have this strong sexuality to the point where it determined who you married and why and when. And your life seems governed by this. And now it seems so complex you don't have control over it. Anytime a human's behaviors feel like they're governing them and are out of control, that's where therapy wants to step in, right? And so we do want to explore the whys, and we also want to start managing the behaviors. And I think that that's what we do in addictions treatment too, and there's a lot of steps that go into that. If somebody asked you, Nick, just how do you fix addiction, right? Where do we start? There's a lot of steps to that.
Well, and I think the other thing too that I want to jump on real quick is that anything, because there's a lot of people that are going to say that sounds ridiculous. You can't be addicted to something like that. Anything that releases dopamine can become addictive.
That's what addiction is.
Right. And so, but here's where it becomes interesting and why it's so different is it's not like sex addiction itself. Can somebody be addicted to sex? Yes. I think it's much, much easier to become addicted to pornography because pornography is on a whole different level to sex. It's almost like it's kind of like, how technology advances faster than our bodies evolve. Right. And where it's kind of, it's developed to a way that it can hijack the inner workings of our brain. How our brain is supposed to work in a natural environment gets hijacked because technology has made things so much easier.
Right.
Like access to porn, there's nobody on earth that doesn't have access to it. I mean, if you got access to the internet, you have access to an endless amount of pornography.
Right.
If you set a goal to look at all porn, you would never accomplish it. It's constant.
Boy,
it's overwhelming. And it's easily accessible.
Right.
And then the other thing too is that if you get bored of one thing, there's something else to take its place.
Right.
And so it's not just like...
And it's designed to address a human appetite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's the same way in which, in a lot of ways, pornography is very similar to video gaming.
Yeah.
People who, these companies that create video games, they have tapped into human psychology. They know exactly how the brain works. They know how to create games that drive people to want to play the game for longer periods of time and more... compulsively,
yes,
right? Because that's how they make the money, by making that happen. So they've tapped into that way the brain works. Pornography has kind of done the same thing, maybe not with the exact intent, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
Right.
So I guess I'm getting to all of this to tell you don't need to be ashamed of this.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
Your brain is working exactly how it was designed to work.
Sure.
It just now all of a sudden is hijacked with this other information.
Right.
So there's, in addition to some of the books, there's a lot of different things that you can be doing to start with. I would agree with you if you could get help with a therapist that is an addiction specialist.
Yeah.
Somebody who has some kind of addiction background would be great. There's a few things that you can kind of get started on, but again, I would encourage you to do all of this with a professional.
Yeah.
But just being able to identify what are some of the triggers that lead to the cravings that you experience. So, some of that could be boredom. It could be certain times of the day. It could be certain things that you interact with that all of a sudden create that urge. That would be a good place to start. Also looking at addressing euphoric recall, which is this phenomena where when we kind of experience that craving, we tend to only remember the positives.
Right.
And we discredit the negatives. So finding ways of reminding yourself, when you do this, here are the long-term consequences.
Right.
Because that's the interesting thing with all of addiction is addiction, you get the reward right away.
Right.
The consequences don't come until much later.
Right.
If it worked the other way around, there would be no such thing as addiction.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I always made the joke in rehab that if there was a drug that got you high, 2 months after you took it, No one's going to be addicted to that.
Right. Yeah. It's the same reason people don't work out.
Right. Exactly.
Or your vegetables, right?
Right.
The payoffs later on. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, you kind of have to make a conscious effort to connect the long-term consequences to the behavior immediately. Yeah. And that can be very difficult. But I think the number one thing that you can do to start with is, instead of trying to just kind of cut down use, you're probably going to be better off just eliminating it altogether and just doing a hard detox.
Yes.
Just, whatever that entails, if that means creating some sort of roadblocks or cutting off access to it. I don't know how you even do that. It's so accessible.
There are programs that will do that.
Yeah.
And they exist, and so
those
are something.
You mean software programs?
Software programs.
Yeah. I think that would probably be the best place to start, because it makes it very difficult to do any kind of work if you haven't detoxed from that right away.
Right.
It gets worse before it gets better, just as detoxing from any substance or any kind of behavior.
Your brain goes through that dopamine withdrawal. It wants it.
The great thing, though, is that your brain's going to reset.
Yes.
It'll take some work and it'll take some effort, but if you stick with it, your brain will reset. A therapist can help you do that. Also, another thing that might be useful too is, in the meantime, work on investing into your current relationship. What are some things, as you're removing pornography from your life, what are some things that you could do to replace that with in your intimate relationship with your partner?
Yeah.
Trying to work on focusing on improving that relationship, and that could be helpful.
Absolutely. So, in summary, Ryder, this is serious. It's something that you take seriously, so we want to take it seriously. It's something that's very similar to the way we fix other compulsive behavior problems that have a brain component. Nick's right. We want you to identify the triggers, not just people, places, and things that trigger you, but emotions. A lot of times with sex stuff, feeling less than, feeling insecure, feeling non-confident. These things can lead us to seeking the affirmation that comes through pornography. And that's a component a lot of people don't understand about pornography. They think it's just sex. That's all this is. You like sex, and therefore you like watching sex. That's there. There's an affirmational component that most of my patients tell me about when they are dealing with this kind of issue, where there's an affirmation from the scene. There's an affirmation of being desired. Everybody's into it. Everybody enjoys this. And that makes us feel wanted and like we're part of it. That can be part of it too. So studying your triggers, developing those insights gives you a lot more freedom to kind of understand yourself, developing these alternative coping patterns. Instead of this, I'm going to go get a soda. Instead of this, I'm going to go take a walk. Instead of this, I'm going to listen to a podcast. That's what I'm going to do. Trying to delay the use as long as we can, because sometimes we'll tell ourselves, okay, am I really just giving this up forever? No, tell yourself this, I'm not going to do this hour. Instead, I'm going to listen to Pod Therapy. And then, at the end of that, we'll check in and see how I feel. And if you can let the craving pass, you'd be surprised how that lengthens your ability to delay and discard the behavior over time.
Yeah, if you can not act on it for 20 seconds, you've decreased the amount of time, or the amount of the likelihood that something bad would happen, or that you'd fall through with that behavior. So
right.
any time you can delay that, it's going to work to your benefit.
Awesome question, man. Hang in there, Mike, and let us know how it goes. And glad to have such an international audience. Neat to find out that people in Singapore have found Pod Therapy. So, I'm not sure who punished you by sharing this podcast with you, but glad to have you with us. So we're going to take our second break, and when we come back, we are discussing dermatophagia.
Nailed it.
You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Robert Downey Jr. Mint, Kayla Lansbury, Crazy Manana Scoop, and Malaya. Would you like to sponsor a show? Become a therapy producer at patreon.com/therapy. Our second question today, with the theme of social psychology, is: social psychologist Kurt Levine was one of the first to study self-generated persuasion in his experiments done during World War II, which focused on trying to persuade housewives to do what?
Oh, God.
A, take on the male role of the household. B, decrease their electricity consumption. C, enter into the workforce to support the war effort. Or D, serve their families intestinal meats. If you'd like to join the therapy producers that make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up.
Intestinal meats? What is that? It's like haggis?
No, it's like intestines and stomach and all that.
Ooh, it's probably that one. I'll bet you that there was. I mean, because you said it was during World War II, right?
Yeah. So
I mean, you're up first this time, so you can.
I was up first last time.
No, I wrote my answer down first last time.
That's true.
All right. The study was. He was one of the first to really get into studying self-generated persuasion.
Self-generated persuasion.
So this is during World War II. The focus
feels like that's propaganda.
Was to persuade housewives
to
do one of those 4.
All right. In World War II, I know they needed them to join the workforce because industry. I could see the meat thing because I remember there being like go meatless or whatever for the war effort. I think that was a thing. That way they could have more meat for the troops. I don't know. So intestinal meats, I'll bet was like scraps, and like so maybe that was better, and I could see that being rejected. I'm gonna go with that. I think it's got to be the intestinal meats one because it's just fucking bizarre. So it's got to be the right one.
All right,
that logic has worked for you so far.
I'm just killing it, aren't I?
Yeah,
I'm going to assume that Jim is absolutely wrong.
Oh, I have a shot.
So I'm going to go with a different answer.
Yes.
Let's see. So the first one was what?
Take on the male role in the household.
All right, so I don't hate that one.
Yeah.
Second one is...
decrease their electricity consumption.
I don't think it's that one.
Okay.
And C...
and the third one is join the workforce.
Enter the workforce to support the war effort.
And intestinal meats.
All right, so, yeah, I mean, there was definitely like Rosie the Riveter and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. There was all kinds of propaganda trying to get women to join the workforce. Oh, I'm between A and C.
That electricity one sounds
I'll go
tasty.
C.
Okay,
I'm afraid.
Workforce.
I'm afraid C. Oh, but I'm afraid C is your trap.
Right?
I'm afraid C is your trap.
It's diabolical.
A. Going
A.
What is it?
To take on the male role in the household.
Yeah, I'm going A.
And yours was
intestinal meats.
His is meats
to serve their families intestinal meats.
Yes. Straight up Arby's. We've got the meats. All the intestinal meats.
It kills me, but Jim is correct. To serve their families intestinal meat. So in this study, what he ended up doing is he used 2 different groups. One group of housewives would get the information about switching to intestinal meats to cut down on red meat. And they had a lecture. They had somebody who would come in and talk to them about the benefits of doing this and how this is going to help the war effort.
Yeah.
The second group only got the pamphlet.
Okay.
And that's it. And what he found was that the second group had a higher compliance. They were more likely
and ate their intestines.
They were more likely to actually make the change to intestinal meats.
The brochure people?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Because self-generated persuasion.
Right.
If you came up with the idea and you decided that you wanted to do it, you're more likely to follow through with it than if someone else convinced you to do it.
See, my problem with this was I was trying to think of what kind of psychological survey would have to do with intestinal meats, and I couldn't think of anything.
Yeah, because really, any of those, none of them have anything to do with what the study was. Yep. The study was just about generating persuasion.
So if you have persuaded yourself to eat at Arby's, that's on you. Okay. Yeah. And science.
There you go.
That's how these ads work. We have the meats.
The more you learn.
Let's talk
So wait,
about...
are we tied now?
Yes.
You're tied.
1 up. See, hang on, Jim. You can get through May. Dermatophagia. Whatever.
Nailed it
Hi,
again.
guys. I'm a longtime listener of your show and a Patreon supporter.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have helped me through some rough times, and with your help, I got into virtual therapy last year. Oh, awesome.
All right.
Warning, this one's a bit gross. Okay, trigger warning for everybody. This is going to be a little yucky. I stopped virtual therapy because I felt like I'd gotten everything I could out of it after 4 or 5 months. I learned CBT techniques for anxiety and self-esteem issues, which I continue to use on a daily basis. Overall, I feel good. However, despite my progress, I feel like I still self-soothe in 2 damaging ways: overeating, possibly borderline binge eating, and biting my nails. Virtual therapy didn't directly help me eliminate these behaviors, but I feel like with time I can get there. I try to journal, meditate, set goals, etc., and find other ways to deal with my emotions. Here's where the gross part comes in. A few days ago, my wife told me about dermatophagia, or chewing on your own skin. I realized that I wasn't just biting my nails. At some point years ago, I started chewing the skin around my fingers compulsively. In fact, I probably do that more at this point. I guess I just thought that was part of nail biting. Both overeating and nail biting are very normalized in my brain. I've done both since I was a kid. I know it's gross and a health risk. Hearing the term and realizing what I'm doing freaked me out. So, do you have any specific advice for this type of compulsive behavior? Part of me wants to rush back to therapy, but part of me thinks that I just need to use the techniques I already have and forget the word dermatophagia. I love your show, and thanks for any advice. P.S. Please feel free to include this or not. We're including it. I wanted to thank all three of you, Jim, Nick, and yes, even Jacob. Woo-hoo! Your podcast helped me over the stigma of therapy, and I really needed it. Like a lot of people in 2020, it was a rough year mentally. I was reaching my breaking point and started having suicidal thoughts. In episode 109, Jim answers a question and gives a beautiful statement about feeling stuck or trapped, that when you feel stuck or trapped, death is not an answer or a solution, and that most importantly, change is inevitable. Before I even signed up for therapy, I would listen to that, and I still keep that podcast on my phone and listen to it whenever I need to. I just wanted to let you know that you've changed my life, and I can't thank you enough. Anonymous. Damn.
Awesome. Well, good. That's great. I mean, we keep Jim around because like 1 out of every 200 episodes, he'll drop one little nugget.
109 was the good one. Yeah, the rest are throwaway. Yeah, 109. Yeah, there's a speck of gold. Even a broken clock's right. Twice a day.
But good for you for getting into therapy. You did the hard work. I'm glad we were there for support. I'm glad you got something out of it, but give yourself some credit for doing the hard work of actually getting in there. Mm-hmm. So good for you.
Yeah. And actually more common than I think people realize. So dermatophagia is similar to trichotillomania. And trichotillomania
just made that up.
Oh, no, that's a word, baby. That is DSM-5 material right there. And trichotillomania is pulling of the hair. Yep. Or picking of the skin. So it's skin picking or hair pulling disorders. It is a compulsive behavior that people do, and we know about it. And biting of the skin is very similar to that. I would actually, if I was diagnosing this, we don't. I'm not doing that on the show. But we probably would lean more toward trichotillomania because that's more of a DSM-5 term. So, okay. Whenever somebody's doing these kinds of unconscious, anxious behaviors, nail biting, skin picking, hair pulling, the first thing we try to do is disrupt the convenience of it, right? Because that's why it's your fingers. That's why it's your hair. That's why it's skin.
Because it's there.
Because it's there, yeah. And because you can do it unconsciously. And it just becomes this soothing activity that we do. So the very first thing that we usually do is disrupt that behavior literally with the most practical means possible, like putting Band-Aids on every single one of your fingers and making it so that you'd have to tear a Band-Aid off to get back to those fingertips to do that, or wearing gloves, something like that, which at first you're going to think like, this is silly. Like, am I really going to walk around with all these Band-Aids on? Am I really going to walk around with gloves on? This is very disruptive. Yes, but what we're trying to do is make it conscious, to take it away from an automatic behavior that you do involuntarily to a conscious choice that you have to go out of your way to do. We do the same thing with smokers. Like whenever they're trying to quit smoking, we say, go put your cigarettes in the mailbox. Like what? Like, oh, you can still smoke. Just now you have to go get them. Like we're just removing this behavior a few steps to slow it down. And this kind of goes back to the similar answer to the pornography question. Delaying a compulsive behavior reroutes the brain just a little bit and starts to make it more of a fair fight.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why, as you were talking about that, maybe I don't need to go back into therapy. Maybe I just need to, implement some of these techniques.
Yes.
And I think, number one, it's never a bad idea to go back into therapy.
Sure.
So if you wanted to do that, I think you could. I don't think it would be a waste. I don't think it'd be a bad decision. That may be something I would encourage you to think about anyway.
Even for the accountability.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Being intentional about it.
The other thing that I want to say with that too, though, is that, it becomes difficult to implement some of these CBT techniques when you're not conscious of the behavior while it's happening.
Right.
And that's what Jim's talking about, is disrupting that cycle. All you're really doing is moving it from the subconscious part of your brain to the conscious part of your brain.
Right.
So that you can implement some of these CBT techniques.
Yeah.
So I would agree. I think that's probably a good way to start. And you can kind of be creative with this however you choose to do it, whether it's gloves, anything that you can do on a regular basis that's just going to be a constant reminder for you as you move that hand to your mouth, that you just, oh, yep, I'm working on this. Let's implement this new CBT technique that I've been working on. Let's do this. Let's do something else.
I tell you, I wear the what are the nitrate, whatever
nitrate
gloves are.
Yeah.
I wear those when I'm working at Absinthe at night these days, and I have the size that fits me really well. And man, I am able to function completely while wearing those
comfortable.
gloves.
They're not
very
bad.
comfortable. Yeah.
What are they?
They're like nitrate. They're like rubber gloves, but they're not rubber. They're nitrate or whatever that material is.
Yeah.
And man, I can function totally in them. And I started wearing them because of COVID when we reopened the show during when the pandemic was more severe than it is now. And man, I can wear those and function in the show absolutely 100%.
Oh yeah.
There's not a single thing that I can't do wearing those, and they're comfortable.
Yeah, they're breathable.
And weirdly, because they hold moisture in, they are more comfortable on my hands than walking around and constantly using the alcohol hand sanitizer.
Right.
I don't dry my skin out as much.
Yeah.
And so that's an added bonus.
So the gloves, I think, is a good idea. The
gloves aren't a bad idea.
Also, I want to address the other thing. I think Freud would probably throw in the phrase oral fixation. And that's a way to describe some of this, is that it has to do with your mouth, like you have to put things in your mouth. So not just disrupting the putting the fingers in the mouth thing, but perhaps replacing something else. Maybe getting lip balm.
Have you tried smoking?
Try smoking. Yeah, definitely.
Nick beat me to it.
Yeah. Shots. Maybe if you could just get those little micro shots of vodka, just something healthy.
Have you tried pornography?
Yeah. There's a lot of directions you could really go in. But yeah, something else to put near your mouth. So whether that's getting out a lip balm and, doing that, moisturizing your lips, or some people get out a toothpick, and like that chewing sensation of gnawing on the toothpick instead could be something that's similar to touching the fingers, that kind of thing. Getting bubble gum, or hard candy, something like that to put in your mouth instead whenever you're feeling that, a mint. But I think that it's okay to still like replace some kind of oral stimulation there. Chewing tobacco, but I just would offer that as an alternative, that I think doing both at the same time, disrupting access to the fingers while replacing, I think that's how Albert Ellis would call that extinguishing. I think that we're learning to extinguish the behavior by replacing and subverting it. So that's one idea.
Well, and I think, ultimately it kind of goes back to anxiety disorders, right? As a way of self-soothing.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what you're doing, is self-soothing. So we also don't want to completely, I don't know as if we want to completely replace it.
Yeah,
because then we're still not getting down to the root cause, which may be why you end up, going back to your therapist for a couple sessions to kind of update your therapist on this new information, because it kind of sounds like it might just be some of the anxiety that you're still dealing with.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I think oftentimes those are, like trichotillomania can be a response to an emotion. And I think it's this compulsive automatic behavior. So it could be both. I don't know. But yeah, definitely I think that Nick's right about getting back with the therapist. Because regardless, this kind of work, I think, requires intention, accountability, and insight.
I think, definitely the accountability piece is the piece that we obviously can't provide to you through the podcast, and that's something your therapist can work with you on.
Well, we can. If you want us to call you and hassle you all the time, we don't mind. Yeah, just giving you a hard time.
That's how Jim lost weight.
Hey, it worked for me. 15 down.
There's a Patreon level for everything.
Yes. Anyway, Ryder, thank you so much for your kind words and for saying such nice things. And we're so glad that you got into therapy. So glad this podcast be part of your journey. And good for you. And I hope that you stay healthy and take the next step. Do what's right for you, okay? All right, friends, we're at the end of the show. Again, we do tape these a little bit in the past. And so if you have joined our Patreon at patreon.com/therapy since May 2nd when we're recording this, we will thank you in a future episode. And make sure you check our Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, where we always thank every patron when they subscribe and help. We definitely are grateful for you. But we do want to thank our their producers. We want to thank the Saccharin 16, the mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of the fan club of their producers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, Kayla Lansbury, Ellie O'Dare, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Dawn, Crazy Banana Scoop, Mason Miller, Scott Jameson, Carolyn Albert, Leon Kassab, Kevin Chamberlain, Malaya, and Richard Macy.
And would you like to... Oh, I'm sorry. I was distracted. If you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited.
And why wouldn't you?
And enjoy our spontaneous side projects, go to patreon.com/therapy. Thank you for supporting mental health.
That's all the time. Thank goodness that we have for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, Matt Mattingly's Ice Cream Social Podcast. And thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. I really appreciated it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Share this episode with someone who needs it by opening the episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting that link we provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, at Instagram at PodTherapyGuys, and at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Intestinal Meats.
Thanks. We'll see you for your appointment next week.
Brought to you by Arby's. Sponsor the show, Arby's. I've given you every reason to.
Guys, I've got a great idea.
Yes.
Okay.
We need to figure out a way for our Patreon to accept people's health insurance.
Oh, there you go.